Hello, everybody. My name is Andrew Crocker. I am the director of Be Civil, Be Heard, a nonpartisan organization in Springfield, Missouri. And we are today hosting a forum, a pair of interviews for two of the three candidates running for City Council General Seat B. If I may share my screen here for just one moment. Now, General Seat B features three candidates for one vacancy. Unfortunately, one of the candidates, Brent Brown, was not able to join us today. We wish him the best, but for now we will be interviewing two of the other candidates. This is a series of candidate interviews hosted by the League of Women Voters, which does lead a coalition of nonpartisan organizations, which does, of course, include Be Civil, Be Heard, which is conducting this particular forum. Now, with that in mind, the municipal election in which this seat is available to be voted on will be Tuesday, April 6th. If you have any voting questions whatsoever, contact the Greene County Clerk's Office, 417-868-4055. I am flashing on the screen right now information for all three candidates running for office. Please contact them as you see fit. Our apologies to our radio listeners, but we want to get to our candidates as soon as possible. It is worth mentioning that these videos will be posted on the following websites: ksmu.org, thelibrary.org, lwvswmo.org, and other coalition member websites. No part of this recording may be reproduced or transmitted in any form or by any means, electronic or mechanical, without the written permission of the copyright holder. 2021 by the League of Women Voters, all rights reserved. Thank you for joining us. Now, the first candidate we are going to be speaking with today is Mr. Craig Hosmer. Sir, how you doing?
Doing well, thank you.
Now, once again, we are going to allot the best we can, 2 minutes for every single question, and we'll be giving the exact same questions to both candidates. Sir, first of all, it goes without saying that every candidate running for public office does so because they believe they can make a positive impact and want to make their community a better place to live. What motivated you, sir, specifically to run for City Council?
Well, I served for 12 years in the Missouri General Assembly, and I saw firsthand what you can do in public service. And even though you're dealing with the state laws as a member of the legislature, you also have an impact at City Council to make your community better, make your community stronger, and make your community safer for the residents of the city of Springfield. And that's what I've tried to do in the 8 years that I've been on council since 2013.
Sir, concerning COVID-19, which is probably the issue of our day right now, do you feel like you trust science and believe the data and information provided by the CDC and leading scientific communities? Why or why not?
We have to. And I think that's, science isn't something that, normally with most scientific issues, the overwhelming amount of evidence suggests one thing. There are outliers, as there always will be. But in this case, I think the overwhelming evidence, basically bringing up the masking issue, but the overwhelming evidence from the National Institute of Health, the Center for Disease Control, the Greene County Springfield Health Department, experts from both Mercy and Cox, all recommended to us that we implement a masking ordinance. And we listened to that. We listened to both sides. We debated that, and we came to the conclusion that that was the best thing that could be done for Springfield. Again, when you're dealing with a novel, they call it a novel virus because it's an unknown. And I think that the actions we took, while not popular with everybody, I think were the right thing to do. I think it was supported and is still supported by the science. It was supported by both the Trump administration and the Biden administration. And it really shouldn't be a political issue. Again, science isn't with Democrats or Republicans or liberals or conservatives. Science is a fact. And I think you have to listen to the facts. You have to assess those facts, and you have to implement policy that's based upon the scientific facts that are available. And I think that we did that.
Sir, I reserve the right to ask follow-up questions in this forum. Is there anything you might have done differently, knowing what you know now, in responding to this pandemic?
I think maybe we should have acted quicker. maybe we should have implemented our shutdown a little bit differently. I think that I think we've shown that masking, if both parties are masked, the risk of infection is relatively low. And so I think we probably could have opened up a little quicker than we did. But I think, and I think I'm not saying we did a perfect job. No one does. But I think that what we did is we listened to the evidence, we listened to the facts, we listened to the science, we made the best decisions we could based upon the information we had. And again, hindsight's 2020, but I think that overall we did relatively well.
Sir, what are your plans for addressing Springfield's 24.8% poverty rate, which is twice the average for the state and nearly twice the federal average as well?
Well, I think poverty has been a chronic problem. I've been on council for 8 years, and it's an issue that we've dealt with, and we've seen the numbers go down a little bit. But I think it's a composite of a problem. It's a problem with education. It's a problem with low wages. It's a problem with health care. The poor people in Springfield pay more for groceries because they have what we call a grocery desert, because there's not grocery stores in certain areas of the city. So people end up buying their groceries at convenience stores. Payday loans. We modified our payday loans rates, which, our payday loans in the state of Missouri charge, upwards of 400% interest. Poor people pay a lot more to get credit. And so what we tried to do is minimize or reduce the number of payday loans in the city of Springfield and utilize those resources to help with the poverty program. We've also invested, I think, a large amount of money through both the HUD program for affordable housing. I also personally tried to work on making homes in the city of Springfield more energy efficient, because behind the cost of a house or a rent, the utility bills are sometimes the highest expense that a poor person pays. And so I think we have to be smarter and recognize that it's a community problem. And in the long run, it helps all of us for us to deal with poverty.
And sir, I have already asked you a question about COVID. I've asked you a question about the poverty that we have dealt with in our community. Let me ask you a question that combines the two, because due to COVID, we have more people in America at risk to evictions. And here in Springfield, how will you work to prevent evictions in Springfield and ensure that people who have already been evicted find new housing?
Well, again, one thing that I think that the city has done, again, we've invested the relief money that we've got from the CARES Act. A large part of that, maybe not as much as it should have been, and I argued on council for more money to go towards rental assistance, utility assistance for people to stay in their homes, because that is a big problem. We've also looked at affordable housing and trying to put more affordable housing on the market. In my opinion, when a developer develops a project, if they get public assistance, I believe that a certain percentage, and a very small percentage, should be available for affordable housing, because you don't want affordable housing just to be in one area. You want it to be available across the city. And so I think there are a lot of things that we can do to address the issue, but I think that it has to be a community-based effort, and you have to get both the private sector and the public sector involved in trying to address that issue.
And follow-up question to that is about COVID related, if we can determine that. Evictions, would you support any sort of local moratorium?
Sure. Yeah, I think that, the federal government has done that to a certain extent. I think the difficulty is trying to connect COVID to the eviction. And I think if there definitely is a connection between the two, then yes, I think there should be, if not a moratorium, there should be assistance that we have through either the CARES Act, which we've gotten a great deal of money that we can pass out to businesses that have been affected by COVID, but we can also use those resources to assist people from being evicted. And I think that's a good use of those resources, because that's exactly what they were for.
Climate change is no longer a matter of debate. Flooding and droughts have hurt our way of life even here in the Ozarks. And to curb the worst effects of climate change, we must transition away from dirty fossil fuels and envision communities that run on clean energy. Springfield, as you know, has already begun investing in renewable energy. Currently, Springfield acquires 45% of its energy from renewable sources. But do you support the transition to 100% clean and renewable energy by the year of 2035?
Absolutely. And I think that in the long run is going to be an economic advantage for Springfield. You know, we're a municipally owned utility, and I think the city utilities has done, I think, a great job in transitioning and having a diversified portfolio of energy. But I think there are other things that we can do. Another thing that we've been trying to argue with is energy efficiency. You know, the best energy you can have is energy you never use. And Springfield is still operating under the 2012 code for energy efficiency. Kansas City, St. Louis, Columbia, Independence, all those other cities in Missouri have moved to the 2018 code, and yet we haven't done that, which I think that we should, because that's doing our part to reduce the energy consumption that we have for homes and businesses here in Springfield, but it also is important for climate change. But yeah, I definitely support city utilities transition to a renewable energy, and I think it's hopefully the wave of the future.
Sir, in January 2019, the City Council appointed the first sexual assault task force, and in November of 2019, it presented their findings to council, and a council accepted the findings. Chief Williams and SPD have continued to work towards the task force recommendations, but at this time, council has not moved forward with any actions put forward by the task force. Do you know about the task force, and how will you work to implement their findings?
Sure. That task force recommendations have been sent to my committee in City Council, and the first thing that we did, we've spoken with the chief about what we can do for sexual offenses and be more proactive. We just passed, I don't know, maybe it's next meeting we will pass the about $120,000 to have all the rape test kits that were backlogged in the city of Springfield paid for by city money, even though those should have been state dollars utilized. There weren't sufficient state dollars utilized. So we're going to have all of those rape kits tested for the DNA evidence that's collected from a rape kit, which hopefully will be utilized to either put on the national or the database where that DNA profile is then recorded, so that you can solve more crimes and have that information available to law enforcement. But we're also working to put more law enforcement officers. You know, right now we're down about 60 police officers, and a lot of times the officers that are leaving are the most senior officers we have. They have 20, 25 years in, and they retire, and they're 50 years old. We should keep those officers in the department. So we're trying to encourage officers to stay even after they're entitled to retire.
Sir, I also conducted the forum for the school board, and the same question for them I think would be really interesting for City Council to tackle as well. How might the City Council work with the school district to address educational disparities where school success is tied to where you live in the city?
Yeah, that's one of those things that I think is difficult, and I think that we have to recognize that, you know, your schools are really, and I know it's hard for the school district sometimes to look at it that way, but your schools are sort of the centers of your communities, and if you take a neighborhood school away, I think you hurt those communities. I think it's important for kids to be able to walk to school, to be in those communities. So I think there has to be a partnership. And again, I talk a lot about partnerships, but I think there really truly has to be a partnership between the schools, because we see every day that if you have a good, strong educational system, which I think generally we do, we have great teachers in the city of Springfield, but if you have a strong educational system, elementary, secondary, college, you'll reduce your need for social services, you reduce your need for criminal services, and you help your city all the way around. So, you know, the one common denominator for people in poverty or people in the Department of Corrections is a lack of a good education. And those are the things that we need. You know, that's something that there has to be a partnership with the schools in Springfield, and we do work on things together. You know, we work on the crossing guards. to make sure that kids are safe going to and from their school. But I think we should work on more, and I think we will. But again, it's one of those things that you're both limited in the resources you have, but sometimes working together, you can actually meet more of those needs because there's two entities working for it rather than just one.
Last, a follow-up question to that, and this will be the final comment I get from you, sir, and thank you again for joining us today. As a follow-up to that question, has there any cooperation with the state on these issues, to your knowledge?
I think there is. I mean, the state is a funding source that we have, but the other problem we have is that we keep taking resources away from our schools and putting more obligations on our teachers. Our teachers are social workers, our teachers are counselors, our teachers are doing everything in the classroom. And our schools really should be places of education. And a lot of those social problems, again, I know the schools have to address them, but I think there should be state funding to try to eliminate some of the burden that's placed on the classroom teacher to take care of some of those other social programs that need to be addressed, but maybe not by the classroom teacher.
Sir, thank you so much for joining us, and best of luck going forward.
Thank you, Andrew. I appreciate it.
Once again, we are here. We are interviewing two of the three candidates running for the open seat in General Seat B for City Council for Springfield, Missouri. We are now joined by Michael Hasty. Sir, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Once again, these questions were written by the coalition. You'll get the exact same questions, although I reserve the right to ask you any follow-up questions in the moment. First question, sir, it goes without saying that every candidate running for public office does so because they believe they can make a positive impact and they want to make their community a better place to live. What motivated you specifically to run for city council?
Well, I'm a father of 4 children who chose Springfield to raise his family here. And I've been here since 2013, August, we moved up here. 2 of my daughters were born here, and just seeing how the city has progressed on certain issues, such crime is really what hit home for me. And as always being a well-informed voter, I kept looking at the issues, see what was going on. And unfortunately here in Springfield, the crime rates are, in most cases, there's a couple specific crime categories that are a little below, but on average, we are above the national average, and that's alarming. And the one that stuck out to me was the sexual assault crimes in the city. I have 2 little girls, and that's a very real possibility that one day that any of my 4 children could be a victim of a crime. And I just feel that with the work that I did as a veteran in Iraq and how we built up a war-torn country towards the end of my tour, that I will be able to kind of tackle those issues and make the city safer. And if it's safer for my family, it would be safer for everyone's. And I really got involved because I have a friend I've known for 25 years, known since I was a kid. He said, if you want to have a direct impact on your children's life, you need to pay attention to the local. And in 34 years, I've realized that local politics kind of get cast to the side. So I wanted to step up.
Follow-up question to that. Could you take a moment, no longer than a minute, sir, and provide us the background of knowledge that you will bring to City Council if you are elected?
I said, I'm a veteran. I served 4 years in the United States Army. I was in Iraq. We fought the war and led into the rebuilding effort, the hearts and minds, getting the I guess you would call it the support and the confidence of the people. I was 14 years in the foster care system, so I understand the inner workings of some of the programs and the systems in place to help kids and families in the community. And I am also a college grad, so I have a little bit of college education I might be able to apply as well.
Thank you so much, sir. Probably the issue of our time right now is the pandemic. And concerning COVID-19, do you trust science and believe the data and information provided by the CDC and leading scientific communities? Why or why not?
We really don't have any other reason than to believe the science that is out there. While science and people need to understand science is a fluid thing. It's always changing. New data collected could contradict previous data, and we have to be wary and mindful of that when listening to the experts. And we have many avenues of information today. So I believe science, yes. I just believe that we also need to understand and accept the fact that science does change as new developing data is collected. And that's been seen through almost a year now of handling of COVID-19, how we went from the lockdown to no masks to masks. And now we have a vaccine rollout, and the data has changed along the way, and the way that it has been handled has changed with the most up-to-date information.
Follow-up question on that. Are you interested in a continued mask mandate if the CDC believes it's the right thing to do?
I would, at the time, have to look at the current data and everything. And I've been asked this before, and I believe with the rollout of the vaccine that we'll be in a different ballpark here in the next couple of months, that it's not going to be that big of an issue by then. But again, I will look at the current and most up-to-date data before making a definitive decision.
Sir, what are your plans for addressing Springfield's 24.8% poverty rate, which is twice the average for the state and nearly twice the federal average as well?
I think we need to invest in the communities, and not just on the poverty side. Coupled with, as we also have, I believe it's a 59 or 60% renter to homeowner rate in the city. And I believe that also adds to the, if you will, the poverty gap that we have here in our city. And we need to figure out a way that the city can help. And there was a program I looked into that the city did once, which was called the Zone Blitz a couple of years ago, where they helped people build up their homes in what were classified as blighted communities. And I believe that will help poverty, as you can build up the blighted communities, which will raise the entire community, because if one house is built up and is better, then that raises the whole value. And I also will be looking into ways to invite more small and local businesses and be more welcoming to entrepreneurs, because it's not exactly easy to start a business. There's a lot of people out there that would love to take some of their investments and take that leap into running their own business, but with all the bureaucratic red tape and all the different laws and codes in place, it's hard for some people. And if we make that just a little bit easier, that will also open up the door for more jobs and more people to venture into that.
Sir, I asked you about COVID-19 and I just asked you about poverty. You mentioned renters a moment ago. This question kind of wraps all of them together, because due to COVID-19, we're seeing increased numbers of people at risk of eviction. How will you work to prevent evictions in Springfield and ensure that people who have already been evicted find new housing?
I know that there is stays in place from the federal government that is currently preventing people from being evicted, as many people are reduced hours, are out of a job due to the pandemic. And those need to be, I would say, need to be enforced in our city to protect the people that are at risk, since we do have such a large number of people that are renting. I'm not going to lie, I don't know all the inner workings and things that I will be able to do. I do know that if I do get elected, I'll have a larger audience and more people willing to come together. And I would reach out to organizations who are already actively throughout our city helping those in poverty, who are already reaching out and helping people who are less privileged or homeless. And I guess you would say, have a meeting of the minds, crowdsource good ideas, good policies that we could use, and that we, within the parameters of the council's abilities, that would, and work with the property owners to allow these people to stay in there and not put people out on the streets, because we don't want anybody out there.
Sir, climate change is no longer a matter of debate. Flooding and droughts have hurt our way of life, even here in the Ozarks. Springfield has been investing in renewable energy. Currently, Springfield acquires 45% of its energy from renewable sources. Do you support the transition to 100% clean and renewable energy by the year 2035?
I believe I answered this question for the Sierra Club. As you said, we have a large chunk of our energy coming from renewable energy, and I believe that green energy, renewable energy is the way of the future. But to arbitrarily set a date in which we can be green 100%, I don't think is possible. I believe that we need to incentivize and we need to push people towards that more and encourage more of that and grow that, because the more cities around the country, and we can start here in Springfield, the more that are investing in that technology, the more stable, the more long-term that technology can be, the faster that we can reach those goals of becoming a more green, sustainable energy source. But as of right now, I think we need to have a diversified energy grid, which Springfield does, and that's good. But we need to just continue investing in that technology to grow that technology so it can have those capabilities in the future.
Sir, in January 2019, City Council appointed the first sexual assault task force. And in November 2019, the task force presented their findings to Council, and Council accepted the findings. Chief Williams and SPD have continued to work towards the task force recommendations, but at this time, Council has not moved forward with any recommendations put forward by the task force. Do you know about the task force, and how will you work to implement their findings?
Yes, I am aware of the task force. I spoke at the listening session on November 9th about the crime and the sexual assaults. I was reached out to, I'm going to leave her name anonymous, but one of the ladies who is working with that task force, I've had a couple private conversations with, and she has explained that she's working with the city council and the police, and there's like a joint task force. I don't know all the inner workings, but she recently told me that they have made strides, and the city council has voted and moved towards using leftover funds to process the backlog rape kits, which she champions as a success on their part. And I told her whether I win this election or not, I would be interested in working with them, as I have family members that are affected by sexual assault. So I've had a little bit of information from them and interactions.
Sir, I actually hosted the forum for the school board as well. And this is a question for them that I think works for the city council as well. How might the city council work with the school district to address educational disparities where school success is tied to where you live within the city?
I answered this question to somebody who was asking me. I don't know exactly what the city council's capabilities are to influence the school. I know that the city council allocates funding and every things that can help the school. I believe, in my opinion, 100%, every school, no matter if they're north, south, east, west, or in the central, should have the exact same amount of funding, the exact same capabilities. So no one area is, as you said, gifted any more of a chance to do better or worse. And as a father, I live in the east side of town here, and we are a fairly poor school district. And I believe that that's crucial to me. I've been very watching on the school board candidates, and that's what I believe from city council. We should work with them to make sure that each school from elementary to middle and high school all have the same funding, the same resources, and the same capabilities. So every child that is in school in Springfield has the same start and has the same opportunities as they progress through the school system.
Sir, I just want to take a moment to thank you for your participation in this forum, and good luck on your campaign going forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.